Welcome to the third episode of Lachie Does Footy. We're going to be reviewing round 2, taking a look at the ladder and predicting round 3. I hope you enjoyed this episode. What a game that was between St Kilda and Collingwood. I picked the Collingwood by 10 points, but the Saints got up by 15 points. Jack Higgins kicked the goal of the year contender. Another player that impressed me for the Saints was Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira's play at half back. As for Collingwood, however, they looked slow, they looked off pace. It sounds like Pedigree inside, but I need to retire. Adelaide versus Geelong at Adelaide Oval. I picked the Crows to win, but I got Geelong by 19 points. Oh, look at that Geelong play. Paddy Dangerfield looks like he's got another year left in him. Tom Hawkins kicked 4 goals. Tom Hawkins is making 36 look like the new 28. And as for the Crows, however, they looked slow, they looked off the pace. Looks like the walls are caving in for Tex Walker's career. What a game between North Melbourne and Freo. North Melbourne looked impressive in the first half. It looked like they could win in an upset. And then Freo kicked 7 goals in the second half after a poor first half. Luke Jackson looked good as a forward ruck. Another one who looked good in the midfield game was Caleb Sarong. While Jordan Clark looked impressive down back. I tipped Hawthorn to beat Melbourne, but Melbourne got the job done by 55 points. Christian Petrarca looked good in the midfield. Nick Watson finally kicked his first goal on AFL footy, but he was inaccurate. Another one Buddy Fritsch kicked 5 goals up forward for Melbourne. The Demons are coming to show why they are still a premiership threat. What a game between Sydney and Essendon. The Bombers led in the first quarter. It looked like they were going to win at the SCG in front of fans for the first time in 15 years. But the Swans, being the Swans, never write them off. They won by 30 points. Tom Papley looked good up forward with 4 goals. So Isaac Heaney looked good in the midfield. It'd be interesting if he can keep playing in the midfield once Luke Parker comes back from injury and when Taylor Adams finally makes his debut for the club. The Bulldogs, 48-point win over the Gold Coast. Cody Wakeman looked good up forward with 6 goals. Marcus Bontempelli had 32 disposals in the midfield, which is his 100th game as club captain. And Tim English looked great in the ruck. As for the Gold Coast, they're not ready for country football yet, and I don't think they're ready for finals yet. What a game between Richmond and Port. It was a close game till late in the third quarter. Port Adelaide pulled away to win by 30 points. Played well for Richmond was Liam Baker, kicked 3 goals, had 23 touches. For Port Adelaide, Todd Marshall kicked 4 goals. Zach Butters was class in the midfield, while Connor Rosie was once again class in the midfield. Another one who played very good under 8 is Willem Drew. And also, there was only 30,000 turning up to the MCG because the Formula 1 was on that day. GWS versus West Coast at Optus. West Coast were in the game in the first quarter. Harley Reid played very good. Looked like he wanted to stay, but next 3 quarters, he totally ghosted the game and wanted to go back to Victoria. There was no doubt GWS won the match. Played very good for GWS was Tom Green in the midfield and Harvey Thomas on his 3rd game. West Coast, the one who played very good was Elliot Yeo. We kick off round 3 with Brisbane and Collingwood. I got the Lions by 28 points. My best players, I'm going to go with Lachie Neale, Charlie Cameron and Zach Bailey. I reckon Collingwood are going to go zip and 4 before we head to gather round to face another winless team in Hawthorn. Good Friday at Marvel Stadium. I got Carlton by 60 points against North Melbourne. Best players for the Blues, I'm going with Paddy Cripps and Charlie Curnow. As for North Melbourne, my best player will be Luke Davies-Uniacke. North Melbourne, they're still only young and still need time. But Carlton, they're more ready for a grand final. Fremantle versus Adelaide at Optus, I'm going with the Dockers by 14 points. Best players for Freo, I'm going with Caleb Sarong and Luke Jackson. Crows, I got Ben Keys. As for Freo, they look pretty good in second half, but if they can have a great first half, they'll be a threat. As for the Crows, they didn't really impress me in the first 2 rounds. They're good in the midfield, but down back and up forward, they are lacking skill. Essendon versus St Kilda at Marvel, I got St Kilda by 5 points. In a close one, best players, I got Jack Higgins up forward and Rowan Marshall in the ruck. For Essendon, I got Jay Gresham. He's out to have a point to prove against his old team. Essendon, they looked pretty good in the opening game against Hawthorn, but round 2, they looked alright against Sydney. As for the Saints, they managed to beat the reigning premiers. I reckon the Saints might, and I got them finishing fourth for my prediction early on. Port Adelaide versus Melbourne at Adelaide Oval. I've got Port Adelaide by 12 points. Best players, I'm going with Willem Drew and Todd Marshall for Port. For Melbourne, I got Christian Petrarca. Melbourne, they looked fragile down back. No Stephen May and no Jake Lever. Let's see how they'll go with their young players down back. And let's see if Clayton Oliver can play with his hand injury. Western Bulldogs versus West Coast at Marvel Stadium. I got the Western Bulldogs by 110 points. Best players, I'm going with Marcus Bontempelli, Tim English, and I'm going with 10 goals from Jamara Ugle-Hagan. With Cody Waitman kicking 6 goals, it's going to be a long year for West Coast. Richmond versus Sydney at the MCG. I got the Swans by 64 points. Best players, I got Errol Gordon, Isaac Heaney, and I reckon Brody Grundy will have a great game. Tom Papley will kick 5 goals. Sorry, Richmond. I reckon your first... Don't worry, Richmond fans. Your first win will come soon. Hawthorn versus Geelong on Easter Monday. I had such high hopes for the Hawks and low hopes for the Cats, but the reverse has happened. I got the Cats by 24 points. Best players for Geelong, I'm going with Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins. Hawthorn, I got John Newcomb. Ladder now. First place, it's GWS. They looked very good in the first 3 rounds to their games. They will drop off this week because they got a bye. Second up, we've got Sydney. They looked impressive in the first 3 games. And they'll go top after beating Richmond. Third, I got Port Adelaide. They looked good in the first 2 games. I reckon they'll beat Melbourne to potentially try to take top. Fourth, I got Melbourne. They looked out of sorts in the opening round, but after that, they got it together. Fifth place, we got Fremantle. They looked pretty good in second halves, although they were not good in first halves. Sixth, I got Geelong. I had such high hopes of them finishing 16th, but they looked very good in the first 2 rounds. I reckon I got 1 more year left in them. Seventh, I got Carlton now. This week they got North Melbourne. I reckon I'll get back to winning ways still again, coming off the bye. I've got Gold Coast Suns. They looked very good in Gold Coast, but they've been out of sorts away from home. Ninth, I got St Kilda. I reckon they'll climb up the ladder. 10th, I got Western Bulldogs. I'm a bit unsure about them at the moment. 11th, I got Essendon. Same thing with the Bulldogs. 12th, I got Brisbane Lions. We got Brisbane Lions. I reckon they'll climb up the ladder. 13th, I got Adelaide. They need to fix up their game, otherwise I reckon Matty Nicks will get sacked after the Swans game. 14th, I got Richmond. I reckon they'll have a great second half of the season and potentially try to knock on the door to make the 8. 15th, I got Collingwood. Once the hangover is over, they can get back to winning games of footy. 16th, we got North Melbourne. I reckon they'll stay there because they need a bit more time. 17th, we got Hawthorn. They are zipping 2 right now. I reckon they'll stay in the bottom 3. Last place got West Coast. Nothing much to say. That's the episode of Lachlan Does Footy. Next week, we'll be doing episode 4 of Lachie Does Footy, and that is The Gather Round.